Wordy Talks. Learn English, change your life.
Hello and welcome back to Wordy Talks. I am so glad you're here with us today because we have picked a topic that I genuinely believe every single person on the planet can relate to. It does not matter where you are from, how old you are, or what language you speak. This one touches everyone. Leo, are you ready to get into it?
Emma, I was born ready for this one. Today, we are talking about relationships, one of the most important, most confusing, and honestly most fascinating parts of being human. Whether you are thinking about romantic relationships, close friendships, or even your relationship with your family, this episode is going to touch something real for you. And if you are learning English with us here on Wordy Talks, this topic is full of brilliant vocabulary that comes up in everyday life all the time.
Exactly. And I love that you use the word confusing, Leo, because I think that is actually the most honest word for it. Relationships are wonderful, but they're also genuinely hard work. Today, we want to explore why that is, what makes them last, and what we can learn from both the ones that thrive and the ones that fall apart. So let us start with a big question. What do you think is the single most important ingredient in any relationship?
Ooh, that is a bold way to open. I would say trust, without any doubt. If there is no trust between two people, everything else kind of falls apart around it. You can have great conversations, you can laugh together all the time, you can share the same values. But if you do not trust each other, there's always this feeling underneath that something is missing, like a table with one leg shorter than the others. It wobbles.
I love that image, and I completely agree that trust is fundamental. For me personally, I would put communication right beside it, almost as an equal partner. Trust and communication are like two sides of the same coin. Without communication, misunderstandings grow quietly in the background. And without trust, you never feel safe enough to communicate honestly. They feed each other.
Yes, and it's interesting because most of us think we already know how to communicate. After all, we talk to people every single day. But communicating inside a relationship is a completely different skill from just talking. It means saying the difficult things, not just the comfortable ones. It means listening to truly understand, not just listening so you can reply. Have you ever caught yourself just waiting for the other person to finish speaking so you could say your own thing?
Oh, Leo, I am absolutely guilty of that. I think we all are at some point. That moment when you're nodding and making eye contact, but inside your head you're already planning your next sentence. It's so human, but it's not really listening. And in relationships, that kind of half listening can build up over time into something much bigger than it seems.
Totally. And this brings me to something I find really fascinating, the emotional intelligence role in relationships. Emotional intelligence, which is sometimes called EQ, is basically your ability to understand and manage your own emotions, and also to recognize and respond well to the emotions of the people around you. People with high emotional intelligence tend to build healthier relationships because they don't just react when something upsets them. They pause, they reflect, and then they respond.
That's such an important point, and I truly believe emotional intelligence is something you can develop over time. You're not simply born with it or without it. It's like a muscle. The more you practice noticing how you feel and asking yourself why, the better you get at it. And that directly improves every relationship you have, not just romantic ones.
Exactly right. Now I want to move to something that I think a lot of our Wordy Talks listeners will really connect with, which is long-distance relationships. Whether it's a romantic partner living in another city or a best friend who moved abroad, maintaining closeness across a physical distance is genuinely one of the most challenging things.
Oh, this one is very real for me. I had a very close friend move to Canada a few years ago, and honestly, the first year was quite difficult. We went from seeing each other almost every week to video calls every couple of weeks, and sometimes even those would get canceled because of time zones or just busy schedules piling up. You really have to be intentional about it, or the relationship drifts.
Intentional. I want to park on that word for a second because it's so useful. Intentional means doing something on purpose, making a conscious effort rather than just letting things happen passively. And that's exactly what long-distance relationships demand. You can't rely on accidentally running into each other. You can't rely on shared habits or routines. You have to actively, deliberately choose to show up for that person.
And I think there's something actually quite beautiful in that, even though it's hard. When someone makes the effort to call you from the other side of the world or sends you a voice message just because they heard a song that reminded you of you, that intentionality feels deeply meaningful. It says, you're worth the effort. You are a priority in my life.
Right. And on the flip side, I think many relationships that aren't long distance end up taking each other for granted. You assume the person will always be there, so you gradually stop putting in the same effort you made at the beginning. That comfortable laziness can slowly create distance even when you're living under the same roof.
Yes, and this connects to something I wanted to bring in, how relationships naturally change over time. In the very beginning, everything feels thrilling and new. Psychologists actually have a name for this early stage. They call it the honeymoon phase, the period when everything feels perfect, when even the other person's little flaws seem adorable somehow.
The honeymoon phase. I remember mine very clearly. Everything was wonderful, every tiny thing the other person did was charming, their little habits were endearing instead of annoying. And then, reality starts to settle in.
Exactly. And that's not actually a bad thing. It's just a natural and necessary progression. Once the honeymoon phase ends, you begin to see each other more honestly, more clearly. The real deeper work of building a lasting relationship begins right there. And the people, couples, friends, anyone, who navigate that transition thoughtfully are the ones who tend to go the distance.
Okay, I want to press pause here for a moment because we've been using some really rich vocabulary in this conversation, and I think it would be a great idea to highlight a few of them properly. Emma, can we do a wordy moment?
Yes, absolutely. I love when we do this. So the first word I want to come back to is intentional. We used it when we talked about long-distance relationships. Intentional means doing something with clear purpose and awareness. The opposite might be passive or accidental. So rather than just hoping a friendship survives the distance, you become intentional. You schedule the calls, you send the messages, you make the choice to stay close.
Perfect. And the second one I want to highlight is emotional intelligence. This is a phrase rather than a single word, but it comes up so often in English conversations about relationships and psychology. Emotional intelligence means your ability to understand your own emotions and other people's emotions, and to manage them in a healthy, thoughtful way. Someone with high emotional intelligence doesn't just explode when they're upset. They pause, they reflect, and then they respond in a way that's fair to everyone.
And here's a third one, to take someone for granted. This is a very common English expression, and it's important to know. To take someone for granted means to stop appreciating them, to assume they'll always be there without putting in effort to nurture the relationship. You might hear it like this: I realized I had been taking my best friend for granted, and I decided I needed to show her how much she means to me.
So natural, so useful. And one more, the honeymoon phase. This doesn't literally mean a honeymoon trip after a wedding. The honeymoon phase is that early, exciting stage in any relationship, romantic, a new friendship, even a new job. We all know it can't last forever, but it's a genuinely sweet time while it does.
It really is. Okay, so now that we have those words properly in our toolkit, let's get back to the main conversation. We were talking about how relationships evolve, and I want to bring in something that feels very relevant today, the role of social media in relationships.
Oh, here we go. I have very strong feelings about this one. Social media has completely changed how relationships function. And honestly, I think in many ways it has made things harder, not easier, even though it was designed to do the opposite.
How do you mean? I can see the argument that social media keeps people connected. You can see what your friends are up to, you can stay in touch with family who live far away. Is that not genuinely a good thing?
It absolutely can be, yes, but there is a real shadow side. When you are constantly scrolling through other people's highlight reels, their perfect holidays, their romantic anniversaries, their happy family photos, it can quietly make your own relationship feel like it is not enough. You start comparing your ordinary Tuesday to someone else's best Saturday ever, and as the saying goes, comparison is the thief of joy.
That is such an honest way to put it. And there is also the question of privacy. Some couples share absolutely everything online, every date night, every anniversary, every milestone. And while that can feel exciting, it also puts pressure on the relationship to perform. You feel like you need to look happy for an audience, even when things are genuinely difficult behind the scenes.
Exactly. And then there's the simple, uncomfortable truth that social media is designed to be addictive. How many times have you been sitting with someone you love and you both end up scrolling through your phones rather than actually talking to each other? Being physically in the same room is not the same as being emotionally present.
That one really hits close to home. I think most of us are guilty of being there without truly being there. And researchers actually study this. They have a term for it called phubbing. Phubbing is when you snub someone by paying more attention to your phone than to them. The word comes from combining phone and snubbing. Studies have shown that it can seriously damage how satisfied people feel in their relationships.
Phubbing. I'd never heard that word before, but I will never forget it now. It is so painfully accurate. Okay, so if social media is creating all these problems, what is the solution? Do we all delete our apps and go live in the mountains?
I don't think we need to go quite that far, but I do think being conscious about when and how you use your phone around the people you love makes a genuine difference. Simple habits help. Putting your phone face down during a meal, agreeing on phone-free evenings at home, choosing to be present rather than distracted. Small choices, repeated daily, add up to something significant.
And speaking of protecting what matters, I want to talk about something I feel does not get nearly enough attention in conversations about relationships, and that's boundaries. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the most important relationship skills you can develop, and yet so many people find it deeply uncomfortable, especially if they grew up in a culture where saying no to someone you love feels selfish or cold.
Yes, and this is so worth exploring. A boundary is essentially a clear limit that you set around what is acceptable and what is not acceptable and how someone treats you or interacts with you. It's not about being difficult or emotionally unavailable. It's about knowing your own needs and communicating them honestly. And here's the key thing. Boundaries actually protect relationships because they prevent a dangerous emotion called resentment from building up over time.
That word, resentment, is really central here. Resentment is a slow-burning feeling of bitterness or quiet anger that grows when you feel your needs are being ignored or when you keep giving more than you ever receive. It builds silently over months or even years, and if you don't address it, it can poison a relationship from the inside without either person fully understanding what is happening.
And the tricky thing about resentment is that often the other person has absolutely no idea it's there. They're going about their life thinking everything between you is fine, while you're quietly accumulating this wall of frustration. That's why, and yes, we come back to this again, communication is so essential. You have to name what is happening before it becomes something much harder to fix.
We always come back to communication. It really is the foundation of everything, isn't it? And I think one of the most powerful and brave forms of communication in a relationship is simply being able to say, "That hurt me." Not to blame, not to punish, just to honestly name the feeling and give the other person a chance to understand.
And doing that requires something called vulnerability. Vulnerability means being willing to open up, to show your true feelings even when it feels scary or risky. A lot of people, especially in cultures where strength is valued above everything else, are taught that being vulnerable is weakness. But in relationships, vulnerability is actually what creates the deepest connection. It's how two people truly see each other.
The researcher Brené Brown talks about this beautifully. She suggests that vulnerability is the birthplace of genuine connection. You can't have real intimacy without it. And intimacy here doesn't only mean romance, it means deep, honest closeness with another person. A truly great friendship can be just as intimate as any romantic relationship.
I love that. And I want to close this part of our conversation on something genuinely positive, because I think sometimes we talk so much about what can go wrong in relationships that we forget to celebrate what gets it right. So, Leo, what does a truly healthy relationship look like to you?
For me, a healthy relationship is one where both people feel completely safe to be themselves. No masks, no performance, no version of yourself that you put on for the other person. Just genuine comfort in each other's presence. You know it's real when you can sit together in total silence and it feels peaceful rather than awkward.
Yes, and I would add that in a healthy relationship, both people grow. You support each other's dreams without feeling threatened by them. You celebrate each other's wins as if they were your own. You challenge each other kindly to become a better version of yourselves. The best relationships don't complete you, they inspire you.
And they survive the difficult seasons too. Every relationship, without exception, goes through storms, disagreements, misunderstandings, loss, stress, change. But the strongest ones come through those storms closer than they were before. Shared difficulty, when faced with honesty and care, actually deepens a bond in ways that easy times never could.
That is a beautiful thought, Leo. And I think it brings us to a really hopeful place to close on. Relationships take work, real daily work. They take trust, communication, emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and, yes, intentionality. But when you invest in them genuinely, the return is one of the greatest gifts life has to offer.
Perfectly said. And you know what? I think our listeners have been such wonderful company through this whole conversation today. If you've made it this far into the episode, you're exactly the kind of person who cares about the people in your life, about growing, and about your English journey.
And speaking of your English journey, if you're enjoying these conversations here on Wordy Talks, it would mean so much to us if you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. We put out brand new episodes every single week, and we cover topics just like this one. Real, meaningful conversations that help you grow your English and your thinking at the same time.
We would absolutely love to have you back. And honestly, sharing Wordy Talks with a friend who's also learning English might just be one of the kindest things you do for them today. Real talk.
Real talk indeed. So to wrap everything up, relationships are one of the most universal parts of being human. We all want to be loved, to feel understood, to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And whether your relationships are flourishing right now or going through a challenging patch, we hope this conversation gave you something honest to think about and some new English words to express it with.
And remember, every skill we talked about today can be learned and practiced. Trust, communication, emotional intelligence, vulnerability, setting boundaries, none of these are fixed. They're things you build, little by little, one honest conversation at a time, just like your English.
Just like your English. I love that, Leo. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today on Wordy Talks. I'm Emma.
And I'm Leo. Take good care of the people you love, and take good care of yourselves. See you next time.
Wordy Talks. Learn English, change your life.